Okay, this video is going to be in regards to provisioning the Yealink SIP-T28P IP phone, this phone right here, to 3CX, which is a business class phone system, which I am 3CX basic certified right now. I'm sure I could be higher certified, I just haven't had the time to try to attempt to test higher. I'm sure I do no more than the basic level. 3CX is a voice over IP business phone system. So it's all IP based using these IP phones. And in this example, we're going to be automatically provisioning this phone on the local area network where the 3CX phone system is installed. We're going to go over how to set up an extension and provision this phone to that extension automatically with whatever options we set up. This phone, it is an older phone that was made by Yealink. It's end of life right now. They no longer make it, to the best of my knowledge. But it's a very good phone just to demonstrate on right now. I plan on redoing this video later with a Yealink T4 series phones, probably like a 46G or 46S model phone. But this phone, it's a great phone, has a very large display. It's a black and white LCD display with a backlight. 6 line keys, so we have up to 6 SIP account support. We have on the right 10 DDS programmable keys, so these have little LEDs in them. And we can set these up as Blf keys, line keys, speed dials, log in and out of the queues, different things like that. So we'll go ahead and go over how all this gets set up and how we can configure these options. We're going to be doing this using Power over Ethernet, which this phone supports, so PoE. There's 2 Ethernet ports right there, a power port and an expansion port. That can go to if you have an expansion module with extra buttons for extra Blf keys, for extensions or speed dials or whatever. If you would like more of these 10 keys here, if you want more of those, you can expand on those with expansion modules and have more of these buttons. So we'll go ahead and power up the phone here. I'm going to be using Power over Ethernet, which is coming out of a PoE switch. This is just a Cat5e patch cable I have going to my local area network where the locally hosted 3CX system is installed. It's running on a virtual machine on a computer that is somewhere on premise here. If you do not have Power over Ethernet, you want to check the compatibility of your phone to see if it even supports Power Ethernet. A lot do, but if you don't, like I know the SIP-T20 doesn't, so you have to use a power brick with that. But if you don't have the PoE option available for your instance, you can use this power port right on the back. You can use a 5 volts DC compatible power adapter and power the phone that way. So I'll go ahead and plug in the Power over Ethernet cable. It will go right into the internet port. The PC port is a pass-through. It does not output PoE, so it takes the PoE out of it. But what that's used for is if you have a computer where this phone is located and you have one network drop where the phone is located, that outputs PoE. The PoE can come into this phone, bring data to the phone, and this phone has an internal Ethernet switch that outputs non-PoE, and you can provide PoE to your computer with just one drop. So you can cover the phone and the computer with either a PoE or non-PoE connection. If you have non-PoE, you just have to provide power to the phone. But that's what that's for. But when you plug in a cable to the phone, you want to be sure to use the internet port and not the PC port. So go ahead and connect power and we'll boot up the phone. Okay, so I've plugged in the phone and it's currently booting up. This phone in particular takes a while to boot up. So you'll see welcome initializing, please wait. So we'll go ahead and fast forward to when this fully boots up and we have our welcoming screen. Okay, so the phone is now booted up. You'll see we have some good signs here on lights. You should not see this usually when you boot up a phone if it's never been on the system before. This is currently registered to another extension on the system. We're going to delete this and redo this so that I can share the process and how this works. So we're going to go ahead and, whether you have any of these lights or indicators on right now, whether it's provisioned to an extension or not, but you're trying to set this up new, you want to go ahead and factory reset the phone, otherwise this will not work. So how you do that, it's very simple. When you're right at the face of the phone, you can just hold the OK button, and you'll keep holding it until you get reset to factory setting. and you just hit OK again. It says resetting a factory, please wait. Now this process will take a while, so I'll go ahead and speed it up so we don't have to wait through this. Okay, so this is what we should get after we factory reset the phone. Just say Yealink, no service. There should not be any line key labels on the screen on the right side there. It should also be in a Chinese time zone, because when these phones are factory defaulted, they default to a Chinese NTP time server. So that's where the time zone is by default. So let's go ahead and switch over to the computer view of the screen recording, and we will log into 3CX and find out how to configure this. One thing I do want to point out, if you need to view the IP address on this phone, you just hit OK. So in this case we have 192.168.1.29, but in this case we don't need that because we're not manually logging into the phone with the IP address and manually entering the credentials for the extension. So instead we're going to save a lot of time and effort and energy by just logging into 3CX, finding this phone on the local area network, and then manually sending its configuration, or automatically sending its configuration to it, and it will automatically just provision to 3CX. So we'll go over that process now on the computer, and you'll see how simple this really is. Okay, so here we are. We're just in Google Chrome. This is on a Mac. You can do it on Windows. It really doesn't matter. All you need to have is a connection to the local area network where you have your server running. So in this case, I'm just connected via Wi-Fi because I'm on a MacBook Pro. So instead of using a Ethernet dongle and getting online, I just figured I could connect to the Wi-Fi here, and it works the same way. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll enter in the IP address of the server. You could use the FQDN as well if you have an FQDN, but in this case I'm just going to use the IP address. So the IP address of the server here is 192.168.1.30, and after the IP address for your 3CX system, you're going to want to do :5000, and that's going to be port 5000. That's what that means. And you're going to go ahead and enter. So we're already logged in here. I have the information saved for the admin login, but you want to use whatever admin login you have for your particular system. Okay, so this is the main admin portal for 3CX. This is the dashboard, and this is where you initially end up when you log in to the admin portal, the management console for 3CX. You'll see we have a bunch of different menus on the side here for different categories, but we're going to go ahead and click Phones. Now you'll see all the phones you have on the network that are unprovisioned, that are 3CX compatible, what they list as supported phones. Now in this case we have only one, but if you had a whole office of brand new phones that you were installing that were, let's say a bunch of brand new Yealinks that were listed to be supported Yealink phones with 3CX, they list that list of phones on their website, you would see all of these on here, but we can see it's a Yealink SIP-T28P firmware version. All this will be marked new because it's unprovisioned. You will have an IP address here, so you can match that up to the phone because each phone will have a unique IP address. You can also match up the MAC address, so you can also hit OK on the phone like we did earlier to view the IP address, and view that MAC address as well if you're trying to figure out which phone is which. Now we have two options here. We're going to go ahead and first start by clicking the check mark on the left of the phone we want to provision. And we can either add a brand new extension if this is a brand new setup, or if we have an existing extension and we want to add a phone, or we need to add this as the first phone, we would hit assign extension. But in this case we're going to go ahead and create a brand new one. So we're going to hit add extension. And we will go over here to general to start out with, and if you want the default extension number, it always starts at either 01, 001, 0001, or 00001, depending on how many digit extensions you have set up, whatever you chose when you set up the system initially. This system is set up for 3-digit extensions, so it just set up 002 because there's a 001 somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and change this, and this is going to be extension 203. And then you enter in the first and last name of the user. So in this case, we're going to do Jim Bob. And you can enter in, if they're going to be using the 3CX app, you can enter in an email address for that, for them to get the provisioning info. So that's something you usually do in a system setup. We're not going to do that here. You can also enter in a mobile number in the event that you would like to have this ring your mobile simultaneously or forward to your mobile number. Voicemail, you can disable voicemail or enable it right here with this check mark. I always keep that enabled most of the time. You choose the whatever language prompt set the user needs. You choose the PIN number. It automatically generates a random one for a new extension, but you can change that manually right here if you would like. You can set read date and time. What this is for is if you would like it to read off the date and time when you're in your voicemail. So let's say you listen to your messages. It can, by default, it does not say what time the message was left. It'll just start with the message. But if you switch this to read AM, PM, or 24-hour format, it'll tell you, let's say at January 1st, 2003, that's a while ago, but it will tell you, at that date and time, this voicemail was left, and then it'll continue with the voicemail message. You can change it if you put in an email address in the first spot. You can have it send different email options up on a voicemail. You can disable voicemail pin if you don't want to enter that in directly from the phone. You can go ahead and record a greeting here, but we don't have a phone provisioned. Usually that's just done by the end user. Forwarding rules, you really don't have to worry about this unless you're doing special stuff with forwarding. Phone provisioning, this is where we want to go. This is where it brought us to initially. So phone provisioning, it'll automatically fill this stuff in. Now, this direction applies to in the office phones, so phones on the same local area network as the phone system. So we want to leave this at local LAN being local area network in the office. So let's just leave it like that. We don't have to worry about the provisioning link because this is going to be all automatic. We have the MAC address, selecting an interface. This is important. It usually works best to just set it to the IP address of the system, although you can sometimes do the FQDN if you have that, and depending on what your system setup is. But I always just leave it at the IP address for local hosted systems. The rest of the stuff you really don't have to worry about. These are just options for the configuration of the phone, so you can change these as accordingly. If you have an enterprise class license, if you've purchased that kind of an upgrade, you can go ahead and upload your own logo that'll put on the phone if the phone supports a logo. But in this case, we're just using a Pro Edition license, so it's just going to upload the 3CX logo, which is fine for this demonstration. Codecs, you usually leave that alone. Usually leave most all of this alone. The only other option you're usually going to change is BLF. So what this is busy lamp fields. So if you remember the 6 keys that were the line keys right next to the display on the phone, and then the 10 DDS keys that were on the right, well, that's where you can set up different functions for what you want these to do. So you can configure this stuff here instead of manually later on. So what you can do is you can set this to have, let's say you want to monitor the status of other extensions and have a speed dial to transfer the extension or call up a colleague. That's where we can set this up. So we're going to go ahead and set up a few of these here just for demonstration. Now, something to note here on this phone, there were 6 line keys by the display. 1 through 6 affects those, and 8 is DDS key 1, so the gray keys on the right, that's where those start, is number 8. So 1 through 6 are the LED line keys by the display, and 8 and further are the DDS keys going down on the right hand side of the phone. And if you have an extension module on the phone, you can add more BLFs and cover the keys on that extension module too. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to set 8, which is DDS key 1, as BLF. We're going to do extension 201 for this demonstration, and BLF, which is Jim Joe, a fictitious name on a different extension, which we'll demonstrate. and we're going to leave that as that. You can have other options like call parking and speed dial and stuff. This is all we're going to do for now. But this can always be changed, and the phone can be updated later manually just by going in here, changing this stuff, and hitting a button. It'll update the configuration on the phone. And then the rest of this stuff you really don't have to worry about. You can set up call recording and hot desking and stuff here if your license supports it. There's a whole breakdown on the 3CX website of what you get with your type of license on your system. So we'll go ahead and come back to phone provisioning here once we're done and hit OK. Now if we go into phones, we'll see the phone is here. And we'll go ahead and check the phone. And we'll see what it's doing here. It can take it a minute to go ahead and register what it's doing, because it has to go, at this point, it might take a couple minutes, but it's going to go seek out the phone, send the configuration file to it, and it's automatically going to do it. So I see the phone is rebooting right now. So we will go ahead and switch the camera back over to the phone and see what it's doing there. We can see the phone is now rebooting from when we sent the configuration to it and hit OK when we set up our extension for this phone. So we'll go ahead and wait for it to continue booting up here. We'll fast forward through some of this and see what happens. Okay, so the phone is now fully booted up, and this is what we see. So we have Jim Bob right here, extension 203, uploaded the 3CX logo to there. And we can see that we have some of our Blf keys running here. So we can go ahead and pick up the handset and we'll hear a dial tone. Put that up to the mic. You should be able to hopefully hear that. I'll turn up the volume. And then if we dial voicemail on here, it automatically programmed the message button, which there's an LED back there. If there's a message that you have in your voicemail, that light will come on. We can go ahead and click that button, dial voicemail.
Please enter personal identification number, then press pound.
If we look back on our extensions, our voicemail will get our PIN. So 4389.
Invalid PIN number. You have no messages. Press
So that's how we access
to
our
play.
voicemail.
Press 9.
And our phone is provisioned. So we can see our Blf keys are on here. I misstated myself originally when I was talking about the DDS keys on Blf here. I meant to say that 1 through 6 are the line keys, and 8 and further are the DDS keys and expansion module keys. So they're just bumps down a few. So these were 8 and 9 that I programmed. So 8, which is this one right here, is Blf for extension 201, and the second one is for extension 204. So we'll go ahead and plug in those phones and we'll demonstrate how some of this works. Okay, so we've gone ahead and set up a few more phones here. So we have extension 204, this is a Yealink SIP-T20, and we have a extension 201, this is a Cisco 7962. Quick note on these, I do not recommend trying to set up Cisco 7900 series phones on 3CX. It is an absolute pain. It is not near as easy as a Yealink or Polycom or something like that, so I highly recommend sticking with a Yealink, or if you're really stuck on Cisco, using a newer Cisco phone such as a SPA series phone or a something like an 8800 series phone with the 3PCC firmware, third-party call control firmware, which it's still not as easy as Yealink because it's not automatic. You have to log into the phone and do it, but on these older 7900 series phones, there is no login for it, so it's much tougher. But with that aside, let's go ahead and try some test calls here. So we'll first try extension to extension. Also a couple notes. I put a line key, we'll get the phone backlight on here. I put a line key up there so you can manually toggle the line on and off right there. So that's something else that you can do in where that BLF section is. And then I also moved up those 2 BLF keys so it looks better. So we'll go ahead and try just basic extension to extension calls with this. So we'll first dial extension 204. So all you have to do, you can pick up the handset and dial. You can click that line button, or you can just click on the speakerphone button right down here. So we'll dial 204 and hit pound. We see we have our phone ringing. On the BLF key for that extension, we'll see it's flashing, meaning it's ringing. So you could click that and pick up the call if you weren't calling it, or we can just pick up the call here. And you'll see it is solid red, which now means we're on the phone. We can place the other call on hold. When we hear our hold music, we see held and unhold. And that's how that works. We can try extension 201. Same thing here. So a lot of cool stuff you can do here. So I'll demonstrate with the BLF keys. So you can just click these if you need to just dial, if you just need to dial an extension quickly. So like this top one is for extension 201. So it monitors that one, and it's also speed dial for it. So we can just click that button and it starts dialing that extension. So if you don't want to remember the extension numbers, you can do that. So another cool feature, which we'll do, we'll call 204 from this extension here. So you'll see it's ringing right there. We can pick up the call. So you can see the status of it. Now let's do that again. So when it's flashing, let's say you know that colleague where their phone's ringing is out of the office. You can press that key and pick up their call. So by pressing that key, you can pick up their call when it's ringing, if necessary. So very cool feature to have. We'll demonstrate something else here. If we call extension 204 and we answer it. We can also use these as transfer keys. So we can press it. Let's say we wanted to transfer this call to 201. We see they're available because it's green. We'll click the key. Disconnects the call. Now it's transferring that call to extension 201. So very simple. And one last thing I want to go over real quick that I'd like to demonstrate under rights for the extension. Something that can be very useful in the office is can intercom. So if we check that and hit OK, gives the user the permission to intercom. And what that does, you really have to be sure that you have supported phones for this. Yealinks always they usually almost always work for this. But like these older Cisco's, they can't do it. They can intercom out, but they can't receive intercom. What intercom is you can dial an extension and have two-way voice. The other extension automatically picks up, and it's like an intercom system. So we'll demonstrate that. You have to have the permission to use it though, which we just enabled for this extension. So what we can go ahead and do is the default dial code in 3CX for paging is *73. So what we can do is we can either pick up the handset or the line button or the speakerphone button, dial *73 and the extension number. So we're going to dial 204, an intercom extension 204. You can hit pound or send. Now if you heard that beep, I'll pick this up so it's not feeding back, but you could hear that beep and it automatically, this extension that we intercommed automatically picked up. And we can talk through the microphone, through the speakerphone. They did not have to manually answer, it automatically answered this intercom call. And you can also listen. You can listen on this other side too. So it's two-way voice for quick office communications. You can also do paging groups, which I'll go over in another video. But those are just some cool features you can do with 3CX and with provisioning extensions. So hopefully this gave you some kind of understanding for how easy provisioning Yealink phones can be on 3CX. This is not a video to try to sell you anything or get you to buy a 3CX system from where we work or anything like that. It's just purely an informational video on setting up these phones and, setting up a 3CX system and learning some stuff about the system. So if you have any questions, please feel free to comment on the video or contact me directly, and I'd be willing to try to answer the questions to the best of my abilities. If you have a ton of questions, I may not be able to get to all of them, but I'll get to what I can and try to help you out to the best of my abilities. So I hope this video was helpful. I appreciate you taking the time to watch it, and have a great day.